From the center of the universe, now in its 7th season covering your 19-time Grey Cup champion Toronto Argonauts, it's the X's and Argos podcast with Argos color analyst Ben Grant and Coach JB.
Welcome to the X's and Argos pregame walkthrough, brought to you by Something in the Water Brewing. My name is Ben Grant. I'm joined by JB, and we are here to get you set for Toronto's final game of 2025 as they prepare to head to Calgary to take on the Stampeders. Here is what we got on the docket for today. All-Star fan voting is heating up. It ends October 26th, and right now it's apparently all riders. So we'll look at who should represent Toronto in the East and across the CFL, who you might consider voting for as an Argos fan. We'll also take a look at the coaching staff from the top to the bottom and sort of evaluate what they've done this season and what's been a pretty difficult season to evaluate coaching. And we'll get into who we most want to see this week as the Argos close out their season in Calgary. Plus, of course, we'll always have our pick six and game preview, injury report, put me down for 20, and challenge flag. All that and more is coming up on this episode of the X's and Argos podcast. This is the time to head down to Something in the Water Brewing. It is the end of the beautiful weather. It is still patio weather. These last few days in Toronto have been fantastic for those last few drinks on the patio. Head down to Something in the Water. Maybe you go this week after an Argos practice at Lamport Stadium. You wander on over to Something in the Water Brewing. Try a pint of Longboat, the beer that was made for you, for fans of the Double Blue. Try any of their award-winning stuff, and you got to try Ghost Taco, which everybody has been raving about. All our listeners that have tried Ghost Taco that have got in touch with me have said it is fantastic. It's a perfect pairing with the award-winning beer they've got at Something in the Water Brewing. So make sure you head down there, let them know that we sent you, and I guarantee you won't regret it. JB, let's get into this. It's All-Star voting time, and we do our postseason awards at the very end of the season, so we'll have those, of course, coming up in a few weeks' time. But in terms of the All-Star votes, this is a tough one for the Argos this year. I don't think there are going to be a lot of Argos All-Stars this year. I think they're going to struggle to represent in the East. I'm not sure how fair that is, but it's the reality of the situation when you get so many guys banged up. I think guys that had a real shot at it ended up hurt. So let's kind of go through what we saw position by position and who maybe has a chance to represent Toronto as an All-Star this year and who fans may consider voting for. So first of all, let's talk about Nick Arbuckle to start. He was on pace to put up MOP numbers, ended up getting injured. I really don't think he was in the running anyway, because we've seen how there's sort of a discrimination against quarterbacks whose teams aren't good. And Arbuckle's numbers were fantastic. I don't think Bo Levi Mitchell and Nathan Rourke were ever really going to be in jeopardy from what Arbuckle was doing, though, because first of all, they were playing extremely well. And Toronto just wasn't in contention. JB, how much of that should matter? Does it matter if your team is any good when it comes to All-Star voting?
Yeah, I don't think so. Not for All-Star. I think for most valuable player, which is, I think, a little bit of a different animal. I do believe there's a base level of success you have to have. For example, I would say if you're an MVP, you have to make the playoffs. But for an All-Star, no, I think you can be a standout member of a team that's not particularly good.
And Arbuckle, I don't know if he is getting the same credit outside of Toronto from the rest of the league for what he did this year. But I think not being able to play out these last couple games completely eliminate, even if he had a shot, and I don't think he did, but I think that completely eliminates him, because you would have to, if you're on a team like the Toronto Argonauts this season, you would have to be leading the league in every category, which he was a few weeks back. But that's not the case anymore. So I really don't think there's a shot there. But like we've said all along, this is an amazing thing for him. He has completely revitalized his career. He's played at a very high level. And while he's not Chad Kelly, he proved that he can be a starting quarterback in the CFL. And I think there's a good chance he will be somewhere else next year. JB, running backs, is there, I can't remember the last time the Argos had a season like this. Spencer Brown is the only guy you can think about nominating as an Argo running back. He played like not even half the season. He's got like 8 games under his belt. He's the leading rusher in Toronto, like 4.4 yards a carry, just over 300 yards. Finally, Nick Arbuckle is not leading the team in rushing yards. It's a bit of a throwaway category. I think we can move on to that one. But I think receiver is very interesting because here we've got a philosophical question. There's no doubt between myself, you, I'm sure, that had Damonte Coxie and Jake Herzlow played a full season with the numbers that they put up in the half season that they played, they would, without question, have been All-Stars, and I refuse to say All CFL and All East. I can't get that. I won't remember it. All-Stars, and I think they would have been up for multiple awards considerations. What do you do with guys like that? Can you have Damonte Coxie, who played 10 games, or Jake Herzlow, who basically had like 9 starts essentially, but with amazing numbers, can you have them on your All-Star ballot?
Yeah, there's no official kind of bar to reach. I know a lot of leagues have instituted that, especially the NBA has kind of instituted a minimum to kind of take the guesswork out of it. I'd love if the league would. I think that would be useful to kind of make it less unofficial when you're like, well, it's not enough games. For me, I'd have to say 12 games would be the cutoff. So I would need 12 games of all-star level statistics to consider somebody. So I think anything under 12 is great, but not an all-star for this season.
And if you look at Damonte Coxie, he played 10 games, 48 catches, 854 yards, which is incredible, 17.8 per reception, 6 touchdowns over a full season. There's no question. It would have been borderline league leading in every category. For me, I think you consider him. For me, my number is 10. My number has always been you got to play 10 games if injury has kept you out. And that has been the case with Damonte Coxie. He was playing at this great level. He suffered seems to now be a season-ending injury. If you get to the 10-game mark, I don't feel like in the game of football you can hold injuries against people at that point. There's got to be a cutoff, and for me, it's that double-digit number, the 10 games. And so I would put Damonte Coxie out there. I think he has enough in his body of work. Herzlow's a different thing. Like Herzlow has technically played 12 games, but really it's just the last 9. Being on the depth chart isn't the same thing as being the primary weapon, which he basically has been since he came back and has put a string of 9 unbelievable games together. In these last 9 games, he's got 47 catches, he's got over 600 yards and 9 touchdowns, averaging a touchdown a game. Over an 18-game season, you double that as if he were in that sort of production. We're talking about an 18-touchdown season. You're talking about 1,200 yards receiving. You're talking about being around the 100-catch mark. There's no question about that. But Herzlow wasn't left off the roster because he was hurt. It's a very different scenario. He wasn't dressing throughout a number of those games. He dressed early on for the first 3, but wasn't really used much. And then Toronto got healthy and he didn't really see the field until they started suffering injuries. So to me, that's a different thing. I think that you do have to hold that against Herzlow, as unfair as that may be. I think if you are not on there because your team has other guys that they put ahead of you, then I think that sort of takes you out of consideration, which is a shame because I don't think there is a better receiver in football over these last 9 games. But I think by the way I have to look at it, I would have him out.
I agree. Both, that they've had all-star performances from Herzl and Coxie, but not all-star seasons.
Moving on to the offensive line, there's only one name. It has been a mess for Toronto all season long. There's no guard you can consider. There's no tackle you can consider. Peter Nicastro, I really believe, had the best season in the CFL as a center this year. And the reason I say that, I know there have been some great performances. There are some very good centers in the CFL. Peter Nicastro was working with less around him. You had Vandal, who didn't have nearly the season that he had last year. Last year I thought was excellent. This year he was off. He just wasn't himself, and hoping that he can regain his form next season. And then Dockstader, a rookie, and then he, of course, has suffered injuries, and it's been a bit of a rotation at that left guard spot. And Nicastro's play has been so solid throughout. And I think one thing that doesn't get factored into how well he plays is how many times Toronto has left him alone just to deal with another team's nose, one-on-one. The only center in the league that doesn't need help against a number of defensive tackles in this league. So I think he deserves to be this not just the East nominee. I think he should be the CFL nominee at center. He won't be. I don't think there's a chance he wins this, but I think that's short-sighted. I think if you look at what he did on the football field and the cast that he had around him, because it's a team game, but O-line even more so. Like, you need the guys next to you to produce at a high level. D-line's like that too. I think he deserves to be there, but like I said, it's not going to happen. Let's switch to the defensive side of the ball, JB. The D-line, is this maybe even more like that on the D-line? Like, if you have a star on the D-line, but just one, and everybody else is struggling, it's so easy to take care of that one guy. And you look at last year's D-line for the Argos, where they had so many guys that were performing at high levels, and you sort of say, well, when they go to different places, how come it's not the same? Because the guys around you all have to be the same. The system has to be the same. There's so many pieces that tie together for you to have a good season as a defensive lineman. And I think when you lose DeMarcus Christmas and Brian Cox Jr., and suddenly you've got guys that are trying to work on their own. And so you look at like Derek Parrish, for example. Derek Parrish looked great when he had that cast that he was working with last season. He looked amazing, so much so that they're like, I think we can manage just fine without Flo, because Parrish looks so good. He didn't look the same this year, and I don't think that's on him. I think it's very hard to look like that when the guys beside you aren't performing at the same level as the guys that were last season. Wouldn't you say?
Definitely. Defensive, much like offensive, well, I mean, similar to offensive line, you're very dependent upon what the other guys are doing. Unless you are an absolute standout. I think the majority of players really need somebody on the line who is drawing the attention. You have to have somebody drawing the attention. If you don't have that, it becomes incredibly difficult for players who are good but not great to have real shots to dominate. So I think the lack of a star on the line sort of lowers, instead of rising water raises all boats, is sort of lowering water lowers all boats. So that's what it sort of felt like, kind of low tide, and it was just really difficult for guys to be able to win their one-on-one battles without there being guys that needed a double team. So that can change pretty quickly. If you can find somebody who needs a double team, it opens up everything. But I thought the D-line was okay. It just wasn't able to get pressure without a lot of heat.
You wonder what kind of season Andrew Chatfield might have had if there had been a couple of studs on the D-line to go along with him. Like, what would Chatfield have looked like with last year's defensive line? The number of sacks that he got, especially early in the season, I think he could have really jumped off the page if he'd had a supporting cast. I think Anthony Lanier down the stretch, he had a bit of a slow start to the season. I think Lanier played some great football in his last few games before getting injured. And again, a guy like that, if there is, if he's paired with Flo, if he's paired with a guy like Serezna or something like that, what does he look like? And it's unfortunate that it's because it's so hard to judge. It's very tough to judge unless you actually see it firsthand. But I don't think there'll be any representatives from the D-line for the Argonauts All-Star wise this year. But if I were an Argos fan looking to vote for a couple guys, I think Chatfield and Lanier would probably get my vote there. JB, the most difficult question I'm going to ask you today is coming up right now. It's at linebacker. If you were going to vote for one Toronto linebacker, is it Wyndham McManus or is it Cameron Judge in 2025?
Uh, yeah, that's difficult. Both had excellent games. I didn't feel either. Obviously, Winton was dealing with incredible injuries the whole season, and so it was really difficult for him to be consistent. But there were, I mean, I guess if I had to choose, I'd probably go Judge. I think he was just by benefit of being healthier, more consistent. Judge had a couple of games where he looked fantastic, and then other games where he was less noticeable. Yeah, I thought it was a good season by Judge on the whole. And Winton just gutted it out, and it's amazing what he was able to accomplish on one leg, but I wouldn't say it reached the level of All Star.
Yeah, I'm in agreement with you. Although I think Judge was also pretty banged up too this season. Those guys, they both hide it so well, and they can both play at such a high level, even when banged up. Wyndham McManus, when he's healthy, is the best linebacker in the CFL. I think he's one of the best defensive players in the CFL. We didn't get healthy Wyndham McManus at all this season. I don't think for a single snap because he was hurt in preseason. Probably shouldn't really have even been out there in the first couple of games, but he's very difficult to keep off the field. He sort of forced his way in there, and he never really looked quite like Wyndham McManus. He was still as good as some of the best linebackers in the CFL, but he wasn't typical Wyndham McManus. Cameron Judge, I think he got burned a couple times just doing everybody's job. Like he was in some games, especially when Winton was hurt. Like he was all over the field. He was trying to do everything he could. And I think if you look at this is again why I think you have to sometimes take PFF with a grain of salt. And I do like PFF, and I'm glad that they are in the CFL. I think it's tough sometimes because I think a guy like Judge gets unfairly punished sometimes because you might see him miss on a play and not necessarily consider that he just ran 45 yards to get there because he's the only guy that was capable of doing that. And so I think he had an outstanding season. I would put him slightly above Winton, even though I do think when healthy, Winton is probably the better linebacker there. Let's turn to the DBs. Tavares McFadden tied for the league lead in interceptions. He's started basically half the season at corner and half at halfback. I think you have to talk about him, and I think you have to talk about Derek Sluka as a safety who came in essentially as a rookie who impressed from the word go. Like from the very first game, he opened eyes. He had that memorable game in Ottawa where everyone was talking about him, the missed field goal return, the scoop and score. And he was a hard-hitting safety all season long. It was fun to watch. Talk about those two guys, JB McFadden, Sluka. Is it one of them? Is there someone else in this defensive secondary that you might be looking at?
No, probably not. Sluka for sure, I think, was fantastic as a rookie. The bunch of times he looked great. I'm really excited about his potential. He is more athletic, I think, than people realize, and he's physical, strong, fast. Yeah, so I'm really, I think his ceiling is pretty high. So I'm really excited about him. McFadden is an old pro. Thought that he played well. He was certainly great to have in the mix, but I didn't, like he made some good plays and then maybe some not so great plays. Like I think it was a fine season for an underperforming defensive backfield. So it didn't reach the level of All-Star. I don't think you'd be hard pressed to it's not all the defensive backs' fault, but on the whole, the unit was not very successful this year.
Yeah, it would be tough. And Sluka, as well as he played, I don't think would get the nod over Katsantonis, for example. And it's the same thing with the linebackers. Like I don't think either of them end up getting the nod. Just even just looking at what Montreal is putting out there, it will be a tough battle for them to get mentioned. But now we get into a spot where I think there's a chance, JB, special teams and specifically kicker. Is there anyone more likely to end up an all-star from the Toronto Argonauts than Liram Haralahu this season?
Yeah, I mean, I've certainly sung his praises. He absolutely is an all-star. Fantastic, dependable, distance, point afters. absolutely unflappable. I would take him over every kicker in the league. Yeah, I think he is the I wasn't joking when I would put him forward as the Argos MVP. Um, I know that's not something that football guys love, but
They don't.
Iralahu for me.
Yeah, I see that. Look, like he's setting records, and there's one more game to go, and we'll see what happens this week. But yeah, one more 50-yard field goal, and he's tied a CFL record. He's already in the Toronto Argos record books from what he's done this season. And you compare him to like Sean White, for example, who has a better percentage than Harilahu. They're nowhere close in terms of field goal length. The fact that Harala, who's not only kicking most of his field goals in the 40s, but also has now 8 field goals of over 50 yards, which is absurd. White has also missed twice the number of extra points in 2 compared to Harala, who's 1. I'm kind of joking there, but Harilahu has been the best kicker in the CFL this season. There's no question about it. And so he's absolutely, in my mind, not just the East representative, but I think the CFL award winner for his position. What about John Haggerty as a punter? His average is top the CFL, but I don't know that this was his best season.
No, it didn't. I mean, some of it is just kind of eye test versus stat. It didn't feel like he was a dominant field flipper. I didn't think he was great at burying teams inside the 10. He definitely bombed some great punts. I thought he was a good punter, but it didn't. The season didn't make me feel like he was a weapon per se. There were definitely a number of times where he punted where I wasn't crazy with the position of it or the length of it.
I am in agreement there. I didn't think that his placement was as good as it has been in years past. I think he was really good at that last season, and he seemed to struggle. Left some balls in the middle of the field this season, maybe trying to get that extra distance or fighting into the wind or whatever it might be. But some of the problems that Toronto had early in the season with the return game, some of it, I think you have to take a close look at John Haggerty. So as well as he punted, I just don't think he'll end up there. But his numbers are good. So if that's what voters are going to base it on, then he's certainly got a shot. And I want to shout out Adam Guillemette because I believe if you're going to have an all-star center, that position is locked in, then you should have an all-star long snapper. Same thing if you got a kicker, if you got a punter, why not have an all-star long snapper? And I think Adam Guillemette is the best long snapper in the CFL. I don't see anyone being particularly close. You look at the ball velocity that he's got, the placement that he's got, it is right in the hands every single time. And all the credit that you're giving to Liram Harilahu was very much deserved, but none of that happens without an elite long snapper. It's so much more difficult. And so I just want to shout him out as a guy that should be a CFL All-Star. All right, JB, let's get into who we want to see this week as the Toronto Argonauts head to Calgary. Last week, they did not necessarily give us a lot of time with the guys that we picked out. So I wanted to highlight a few guys this week, and we'll see who you're looking forward to seeing in Calgary, as this is our last opportunity to kind of evaluate the roster heading into the offseason where some difficult decisions are going to be made. So who would you put top of your list, JB, in terms of guys that you want to see more from this week in Calgary?
I am still curious to see what Dorian Anderson can do. Obviously, he's got great measurables. Yeah, I'd love to see him, get some more run and see what kind of potential there is there for him to make the club. It won't be easy. I think even next year, wide receiver is probably the strongest room in the team. But there will be some changes. There definitely will be, I think, a couple people out. So yeah, I'm curious to see if Anderson can stand out a little and show something to be on the radar.
Yeah, I would like to see him. I'd like to see them kind of force targets a little bit more with him. He got a couple last week. He was in there and had a chance at a ball in the end zone that just didn't quite make it there, thrown into a strong wind. Obviously, that would have been a highlight moment. But yeah, anytime you get someone with that kind of height speed combo, I think you want to take a close look. And so I think that's what this game is about. I think you have to choose a handful of guys and say, look, we are going to force game action on them. If it's a receiver, we're just going to throw them the ball, covered or not. We want to see them make a play. If it's somebody defensively, it's hard to control where the ball goes, but that's where I would suggest guys that you want to take a look at, you got to start them. And so one of the beefs I have with last week is one of the guys that you picked out, Aaron Casey. I want to see more. I want to see start to finish. He has been fantastic and was fantastic again last week. Forced fumble recovery. Start him at the middle linebacker spot. I love Darkangelo. I think he's great, but I know what he is. I have a very good feel for what Isaac Darkangelo is. I don't fully get what Aaron Casey is yet. I think what I've seen from him is amazing, but I want to see start to finish. I want to see him play almost every defensive snap that you can get him out there for. So he'd be a guy that I would lean heavily towards. And on that same defensive side of the ball, Brevin Allen, get him in the game, see what he can do. He's done some really awesome stuff in his college game, playing for the Campbell Camels. Delonte Hood got a lot of run last week. He was picked on a bit. I don't think had an amazing game, but I want to see more. Have him out there. Put him over in the boundary spot. See him play boundary corner where you know that he's going to have a chance to defend a bunch of plays. Get Delonte Hood involved so that we can evaluate him properly. And then the last guy that I'm going to end with, JB, Tucker Horn. He had basically a series. He had one play and a series last week. Looked fantastic. I thought he threw the ball really well. He ran the 2-minute offense very effectively. I love some of those little details like carrying out his fake after handing the ball off. I want to see extended time. And the thing is that I don't know if we're going to get this, but I know what Jarrett Doege is. I have a full understanding of Jarrett Doege's game. I don't need to see him this week in Calgary. I need to see Tucker Horn. I need to see Max Duggan. I want to see him do more than just short yardage package stuff. I want to see him actually out there with dropbacks, hanging out in the pocket, scrambling, making plays like he did at TCU. Like those two guys maybe are the two guys I'm most excited to see, and I'm worried that it's just going to be 4 quarters of Jarrett Doege, who again, nothing against Doege, but I know what I'm looking at. I want to see guys where I don't know what I'm looking at. Anyone else you want to add in there, JB, or you want to reflect on any of those guys?
I think that's it for me. I mean, I've seen most of what the Argos have to offer. I don't think there's a super long list of people I'm hopeful to see. The running back I was hoping to doesn't look like that's going to happen. So yeah, I'll just go with my guy.
For pick 6 this week, we've got a tough one, JB, and this is the last pick 6 of the season. And it's a promotion that we've ran all season long, Something in the Water Brewing, sponsoring this segment, giving away a 6-pack of beer to whoever's question we pick every week. So every week we draw a question after a prompt, and if we answer your question on the podcast, you win a 6-pack of beer courtesy of Something in the Water Brewing. And our last winner of the season is Brian Sword, who has asked the following question, and it is a very tough one, JB. I love it, though. He says, I'd love for you guys to break down the performance of each positional coach this season, especially running back, O-line, and DB. I'd love to hear your insights on how they did, and if any may not be back. There's 100 reasons why this is difficult, but I think the first and probably most important is I think this is the hardest season in recent memory for me to evaluate not just positional coaching, but coordinating, head coaching. I think it's been extremely tough because the roster hasn't been very good. The guys that were very strong players got banged up early, and we never really got to assess a lot of this coaching staff because of that.
No, I don't feel that. Well, we've talked all season. It didn't feel like this was a team that was underperforming, or a team where the scheme didn't make any sense, or where there seemed to be issues around what the coaches were doing. It didn't feel that way to me, anyways. Obviously, like the offensive line did not excel this year, but clearly there's not a need for a change at offensive line coach. Defensively, the defensive backs were not strong, but I didn't feel like the scheme was wrong or that they had them running man when they couldn't do it. It just really felt like the level of ability of the team was not high enough. They just didn't have enough good play, or even great players to compete. And so I felt like there was like the underlying structure of the team is good, but you have to have 6 or 7 stars, for lack of a better word, that you can roll in with the guys who are good. You can't just roll with the team of guys who are good. You're going to win 5 games or 6 games with a group like that. So if they can find a way to find a few stars in each position, I think that the changes will be immediate, and like that old line, right? Like show me a good goalie and I'll show you a good coach. That can change pretty quickly, if you can roll that in and then suddenly the coaching staff is shining. I didn't feel like there was anything that jumped out as being an issue in terms of scheme or players that were underused or under evaluated. It didn't feel that way.
No, the only thing all season that I had issues with were the lack of quarterback sneaks, but I think Ryan Dinwiddie is the best head coach in the CFL, and I think he's the best offensive coordinator in the CFL, and so that frustrates me to no end. But obviously, I think you keep running with him. I think there's nobody better. And like you said on the O line, like Coach Sweet is an excellent offensive line coach. The performance of his group this year, I don't think was indicative of his coaching ability. I think it was. And I'm not even sure how much, I think some of these players too that had a really rough season, I think a lot of those guys I would bring back, and I think they need another run at it with a healthy team. It's just not the same when you don't have your starting quarterback. You've got like 20 different running backs throughout the course of the season. Everything about this year for the Argos has just made it so tough to evaluate that. But yeah, Coach Sweet is not the issue. Mike Miller, quarterback's coach, is outstanding. I think maybe his stock even goes up this year. He and you look at Coach Costanza too, along with Dinwiddie, what they were able to get out of the quarterback receiver play with an offensive line that was struggling. I think that says a lot. Like I think you have to tip your hat to Mike Miller. And when you look at what he and Coach Dinwiddie, and I think it's important to throw Costanza in there too. I think he's an excellent coach. I think all 3 of those guys. And I would throw Sweet in there too. Like this offensive staff is extremely good. And so as an Argos fan, you need to be hoping that none of those guys go anywhere. But I think the nice thing about not having a great season is, unlike the last few years where it just feels like all the best coaches on the staff end up walking at the door, I don't feel like that's going to be the case this year. I think Toronto is going to have the opportunity to run it back with the staff if they want it. And then running backs coach, Dominic Picard. The way I evaluate him, for me, what stands out as a running backs coach is pass protection in the CFL. And I thought he did very well in that regard. And guys that weren't necessarily, guys that didn't come into the league as known pass protectors. And I want to look at Deontay McMahon specifically. And I know his PFF grade for pass blocking isn't good. I don't know why. I've graded all of his film. I've graded all of his games. I know he hasn't had a ton of run this year. He is a good pass protector. He is much better a pass protector this year than he has been in the last few years. There's no question about that for me. And so I take that and I say that is a tribute to Coach Picard. And I think you look at Mayan Williams before he got injured. He was doing a great job in pass protection. And then Spencer Brown came in, another guy that wasn't necessarily known for that. And he's been just fine as a pass protector in this offense. And so I think you have to say that based on that, Dominic Picard did a nice job. I love having offensive linemen as running backs coaches. I much prefer that to having like a former running back as a running backs coach, because I feel like the most important thing they do on the field is pass protect. JB, let's get to the defensive side of the ball. The defense struggled this year. There's no question about that. I don't know how well we can evaluate any of it. Do you think the Argos need to re-examine the co-defensive coordinator thing? Because we questioned it last year with Ivan and Fields. We were like, I don't know if this is going to work. We didn't really like it, but then the defense was outstanding. And so you're like, well, I guess you have to be okay with running that again. This year, the defense wasn't outstanding. So do you have to take a close look at co-defensive coordinators?
Yeah, I difficult to know with not being inside the building. Yeah, I would hope that everything is going to be looked at. Sort of excuses aside or reasons aside. The reality is this was not a very successful season for a team that has held the bar pretty high. So I'd imagine there is going to be some pretty good self-scouting and evaluation upon did the co-defensive coordinator thing work? How unified were they in their plan? It's difficult to do. Like I think I can only imagine, that you're not always going to strike gold with two coaches who are going to be so in lockstep that they kind of work really well together and don't have individual theories. I mean, I would have thought it would have been too difficult last time. Maybe they weren't quite as lucky this time. Yeah, it's an unusual idea because football's pretty hierarchical and there are lots of theories and strategies that you can use, and usually you need one person to kind of say, well, this is the one we're doing. So yeah, I think that's definitely worth looking at and reflecting upon how cohesive was the defense inside the building.
And like you said off the top, I think it's very tough for us to say because we don't know exactly how it worked. We don't know if maybe there weren't any problems with it, but we have no way of knowing that. We just know that it's something that's unconventional that teams don't typically do, and the defense struggled this year. So yeah, let's take a look at that. And I think the guys in the building, the guys that are on that staff, have a good sense of, well, no, that wasn't at all the problem. It had nothing to do with the defensive struggles. Maybe that's the case, but maybe there is some thought that, yeah, maybe the cohesion would be better if we went to a more traditional hierarchy for this. I think they could also add a body in there. You look at the offensive side where they've got extra staff in there, because we didn't even talk about like Drew Tate in his role as an offensive assistant. But the defense doesn't have those same kind of numbers. You've got like Marcus Grandison, who I really like a lot. I think you have to also consider his contributions because I think I love his eyes, and I know he's an accomplished coach. But you look at their primary coaches on their staff, Shivers, Ivan, Marshall. Greg Marshall, I have no idea how you evaluate this season. I think you look at it and say like he'll basically lost all his guys, and then two of the guys that he was really counting on, who looked great to start in Cox and Christmas, were gone. And so you look at the way he developed some of the other guys, and I think there's promise there. Obviously we know a lot about Greg Marshall. He's been around a long time, so I don't think he's an issue. Kevin Ivan, we both really like, and as a linebackers coach, I'm perfectly happy with him, and I think he's got a real argument for becoming a solo defensive coordinator if they decide to go that way. Jason Shivers, I really like as a DB coach. I think that's where he's been at his best. Again, I don't know what his relationship was like in the room and how his co-defensive coordinating went this season, but I could see him getting like a lot of the fan blame, and I don't necessarily think that's fair because I don't think fans, just as you and I just don't think we know enough. I think he's a really easy target because he's a new guy in the room and the defense was good before, and not every stop that he's made along the way has been successful. But I really do like him as a DB coach. And like you said, there was nothing that we saw schematically out there. And there certainly wasn't anything we saw in terms of like lack of development where you'd be like, yeah, this guy doesn't belong on the staff. So I would be perfectly happy if they ran it back with all these guys, but I do think they have to take a close look at the coordinator. And then let's end with Mickey Donovan, special teams coordinator. We're both fans of him. What did you see from him this year, and what was a pretty slow start to the special teams season?
Yeah, I mean, there were definitely some games early where there were some issues, and I think Coach obviously There definitely seemed to be some tensions there with the head coach and special team performance. Again, I think that's probably connected to injury as special teamers came back. Not unrelated to the fact that special teams got much better in the final 3 or 4 games. So, yeah, I thought special teams have been good the last couple of games, and it hurt them at the beginning for sure when there were a couple of guys down and they weren't able to get it done when they were, like when they were already missing their quarterback, so they needed the special teams to kind of be dominant all year. But I thought that the coverage was definitely good. I think anytime you're looking at a team, the team improves, that to me tells you everything you need to know about the coaching, right? When the unit is improving, that tells you don't need to touch the coaching, and I think that's the case here.
Yeah, I put him in the same category as Coach Sweet, where I just don't think I don't have any questions. I know what they're both capable of. I have full confidence in them, and like you said, it's a perfect example. Like when the guys were healthy, his unit looked great. They were terrible to start the season. There's so many games where it was just a giant special teams miscue. But we knew that was an outlier. That wasn't what Coach Donovan is known for. But he had all these guys on the shelf, and then once you got Kassar and Haralamana and all those guys back, suddenly the special teams play improved significantly. So yeah, I have no issue at all with what he did.
It sounds like pretty cheery, but I think people should remember that the Argos essentially were in almost every game this year, and easily could have had. Yeah, look, they stole some wins too, but they easily could have had 3 or 4 more wins easily, and been right in the playoff, competition and even the division. So I do think the reason that we seem sort of optimistic about things is the team was right there. It just didn't have the ability to close out games. It didn't have somebody they could get the sack with in the fourth quarter that they needed, or a running back, who was able to kind of run the clock. These are things that are able to be fixed, but this was not a season, like 2018 or something where they're just not even within a rock throwing distance of the team that they're playing. There wasn't a game this year, I thought, that they were outclassed. So I think that's where our kind of positivity comes from is I thought things went pretty well, oddly enough, this season. It just needs a little bit of just needs a little star power injected into it.
Let's get into the injury report for this week. A lot of guys on both lists. At this time of year, you don't have guys put on the 6 games. So you've got like Arbuckle and McManus who are still appearing on the injury report. Chad Kelly's on the injury report because his 6-game stint is coming up for renewal. And so these are long lists, but kind of highlighting some of the key guys for Calgary this week. Joshua Nantwi went full today after being limited yesterday with the head injury. Adam Bighill practiced full again. He was off last week for what they call load management, but basically was a healthy scratch for last week. I don't think we're going to see him in this game. O-line could be an issue for Calgary. Josh Coker, left tackle, did not practice at all this week. He's got a knee injury. Thomas Jack Cardilla didn't practice at all this week, the guard with the calf injury. So that could be something to watch. Lorenzo Malden was limited today, went full yesterday. That is interesting to me. I think we got to keep an eye on that one. And then Jalen Philpott didn't practice yesterday, was limited today with a head injury. We'll see if he is able to make it for this one. And then on the Toronto side of the ball, you've got Darius Bratton going full both yesterday and today with the groin injury. Andrew Chatfield Jr. did not practice yesterday and today with the foot injury. Sirocco went full both days. Sage Dockstader has not been able to practice this week with the elbow injury. Anthony Lanier has not practiced with his ankle injury. We've already talked about Arbuckle and McManus being out. Anthony Vandal did not practice at all this week with the ankle injury. Mayan Williams, I want to talk about for a brief moment, went full yesterday, went full today. I love everything Mayan Williams brings. I would not dress him for the last game of the season just because I don't want to risk it. Head injuries are so unpredictable and so important. And just for a guy that's been out this long this season in a meaningless game, I love that he's able to practice full. I think that is a great sign. I think he's a heck of a running back. And so I would not, I've seen enough from him. I would not dress him this week, even if he feels like, and the team doctors are like, yeah, I know he's at full health. I just don't think that's a sound decision given the nature of it being such a serious head injury. All right, JB, we've got some work to do as we get into Put Me Down for 20. It's been a rough stretch. You have now lost 10 in a row. I have been bleeding golden fleeces. If there was ever a better poster for why you should not bet on anything that we pick and why you should protect your money, and if you ever do decide to gamble, make sure you never wager more than you're happy to lose as the cost of entertainment. It's been a rough stretch. I did go 1-1 last week, but I was still down a golden fleece because of the juice. I had the Argos Riders under 49.5 last week, which won, but I had Ottawa Montreal over, which lost. You had a second half touchdown from Jake Herzlow, which did not come through, and you had Ottawa on the money line, which did not come through. JB, let's start with you. You got 129.5 golden fleeces.
All right.
You've got some work to do, but
it's still. I didn't have to borrow any last year. Remember, I'm still, I'm still quite happy in terms of building. We're still building in the correct direction.
So, what are you going to do with your golden fleeces this week?
I'm going to look all 20. I'm all in. I'm pushing 20 into the table. I'm putting on the Argos plus 375 to win. I think they are still going to be dialed in. I think coach is going to want to win. I think that Calgary needs a win here. But much like last week, I think that Toronto is right there, and there's going to be a big push to finish the year on a win.
Calgary's a tough team to assess too. Like they looked amazing against Hamilton, but remember they looked amazing the last time they played Hamilton. For whatever reason, they have everything go right when they played the Tiger Cats. They haven't looked like that for like the past month and a half. And so you don't know what we're going to get from them. And with, again, the Calgary-Toronto ties, I know it's been a long time now, but I still think going back into McMahon Stadium for Coach Dinwiddie means something. So yeah, I like that pick. I'm going in a different direction though. I'm trying to stay ahead here. I'm at 234 golden fleeces, but it was like 274 just a few short weeks ago. So I'm just trying to end up still in the money. So I'm playing it a little safe with my Argos bet. I'm going 10 golden fleeces on under 52.5, which I know you find very exciting. And then my other 10 golden fleeces, I'm going to put on the Elks on the money line at plus 195. They're playing great football right now. They're going into BC, and that is not going to be an easy game. There's no question about that. But BC's weird too. They look some weeks like they can beat absolutely anybody, and there are other weeks where they look terrible. And so they've looked pretty good lately, but maybe this is one of those regression games, and the Elks need to win more than the Lions need to win. So that's where my fleeces are going. And into Challenge Flag, JB, I'm afraid it's mathematically all over for you. I won last week. I had Edmonton in the Edmonton-Winnipeg game. That was the play I challenged.
Winnipeg. My God.
They couldn't get it done. And so you're just playing for pride now at this point, JB, ridiculous. As we...
Yeah, me and the Argos. That's all that we have.
Play it out the season. So let's go through it. Let's see what your picks are this week. We got Saskatchewan at Winnipeg. Saskatchewan's going to be resting a bunch of guys. Winnipeg is playing for their playoff lives. I assume you're going to take the Bombers here.
Yeah, I think that that is the play for sure.
For the second game, also Friday, Edmonton at BC. This one's more interesting.
Yeah, I like Well, the Elks have definitely been a problem for me all season, but I'm gonna take BC here at home.
And then we got Montreal at Ottawa. There's no. I'm writing down Montreal right now. There's no chance
Yeah,
you're
I mean
taking
Montreal
Ottawa.
needs it, right?
Yep.
So I think Montreal beats team 3-2-1 Cancun.
And lastly, Toronto at Calgary. Are you hedging here on your very
No, I'm all
rich
in.
wager?
2020 Golden Fleeces. Like the Argos, we're both just playing for pride, and I feel we're going to come through together.
This is an easy challenge for me just because it is your Achilles heel. I am going to take the Elks. I am throwing my challenge flag on your BC pick because
Yes.
I enjoy when the Elks cause so much pain for you every week.
Yep, they are a frustrating bunch.
So that's going to be my play for this week. I'm up 11-8 on the season with 2 weeks to go in this 2025 regular season. This Saturday, it is the final game of the 2025 season for the Toronto Argonauts. 7 o'clock kickoff, Toronto at Calgary, Saturday, October 18th. And Mike Hogan and I are back on the airways. You can check us out on 1050 if you want to tune in. I suggest syncing us with your television as well if you're watching the TV broadcast, so you can hear the local Toronto play-by-play as well as getting the picture on your TV. And of course, if you're driving around, we're always happy to have you as well. You can find us on TSN 1050. That will just about do it for us on the pregame walkthrough episode of the X's and Argos podcast. For JB, this is Ben Grant saying so long, and may all your pre-snap reads be good ones. I'll see ya.
Go, Toronto Argos, go, go, go. Pull together, fight the foe.